In the cold, silent void of space, the Zalorian fleet drifted like a shadow of death, a harbinger of ruin and despair. Their ships, sleek and predatory, glimmered with a faint green hue, an eerie radiance that seemed to pulse with the energy of destruction, as though the ships themselves were alive, breathing vengeance into the cosmos. At the fleet's center, the flagship Oblivion Spear loomed larger than the rest, its jagged, angular design cutting through the darkness like a blade poised for the kill. The ship's hull was adorned with scars of victory, fragments of conquered vessels embedded within its surface like trophies of war. Commander Vexarian stood at the helm, a figure of terrifying authority. His 6 gleaming eyes scanned the emptiness before him, each moving independently in a grotesque dance of observation that seemed to pierce through the fabric of reality itself. His face was sharp and angular, his skin a deep crimson that shimmered faintly under the dim light of the command deck. Vexarian's armor, forged from the rarest metals of dying worlds, reflected the faint glow of the ship's control panels. It was not merely armor. It was a testament to his conquests, a reminder that he was not just a warrior but a force of annihilation, a legend whispered in fear across the galaxy. Ahead lay 3 human merchant ships, drifting lazily as if unaware of the danger closing in. Their hulls were plain, unremarkable, a stark contrast to the advanced weaponry and sleek designs of the Zalorian fleet. To Vexarian, they were nothing more than insects, fragile and insignificant. He sneered, his voice rumbling through the command deck like distant thunder, a sound that reverberated through the hearts of his crew. "Humans," he said, the word dripping with contempt. "They dare wander into our sector with such pathetic vessels. They will serve as an example to the others who forget their place." The Zalorian fleet moved in closer, their formation tightening like a predator stalking its prey. The merchant ships were scanned, their systems probed. No weapons, no shields, just primitive cargo transports, vulnerable and exposed. The Zalorians laughed among themselves, their arrogance palpable, their confidence unshaken. To them, this was not a battle. It was a slaughter waiting to happen. But aboard the human vessel Horizon Asterisk, Captain Elias Grant stood calm and resolute, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing outside. His face, weathered by years of experience, betrayed no fear. His sharp blue eyes, like twin shards of ice, narrowed as he assessed the enemy on the ship's monitor. Around him, his crew worked in silence, their movements precise and deliberate, each action a piece of a larger plan. The tension in the room was palpable, yet it was not fear that filled the air. It was determination, a quiet resolve born from the knowledge that they had prepared for this moment. "They think we're weak," Elias said, his voice steady but filled with quiet determination. "Let them come closer. Let them think they've already won." The other 2 ships, Asterisk Vanguard Asterisk and Eclipse Asterisk, maintained their positions, drifting in perfect synchronization with the horizon. Their exteriors were equally plain, hiding the truth beneath layers of deception. Inside, hidden compartments held advanced weaponry, experimental shields, and reinforced armor, technological marvels crafted through years of ingenuity and sacrifice. These ships were not mere merchant vessels. They were wolves disguised as sheep, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the Zalorian fleet closed in, their arrogance blinded them to the trap that had been carefully set. The void seemed to grow colder, heavier, as if the universe itself held its breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines and the rhythmic pulse of distant stars. It was a moment suspended in time, a fragile pause before the storm of chaos and fire that was about to erupt. There was something deeply philosophical in this confrontation, a clash not just of technology and tactics, but of ideals and values. The Zalorians, with their advanced weapons and unyielding arrogance, represented the tyranny of power unchecked, the belief that might alone determines worth. The humans, underestimated and overlooked, stood for something far greater: resilience, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit to fight against impossible odds. This was not just a battle, it was a reckoning. It was a reminder that arrogance blinds even the most powerful, and that strength is not always found in brute force, but in the ability to adapt, to endure, and to outthink the enemy. Captain Elias Grant understood this truth deeply. His years of command had taught him that victory was never guaranteed, but it was always possible if one had the courage to fight for it. Around him, his crew shared that belief, their faces hardened with determination. They were not warriors by birth, but they had become warriors by necessity. They had learned to turn weakness into strength, to transform fear into fuel, and to wield hope as their greatest weapon. The Zalorian fleet moved closer still, their ships now within striking distance. The tension in the air was electric, a crackling anticipation that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space. Vexarian's voice echoed once more, filled with cruel confidence. "Prepare the energy cannons," he commanded, his tone cold and final. "End this quickly." But aboard the Horizon Asterisk, Elias Grant smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that spoke volumes. The humans were underestimated, but they were ready. The void of space stretched endlessly, an infinite expanse where time seemed to lose meaning. Stars flickered faintly, distant and indifferent witnesses to the unfolding drama. The three human vessels, Asterisk Horizon Asterisk, Asterisk Vanguard Asterisk, and Eclipse Asterisk, floated in this vast emptiness, their battered exteriors telling stories of countless journeys. Their hulls were marked by the passage of years, scratched and worn as if they had endured storms of cosmic debris and the trials of survival. To the Zalorian fleet, these ships were nothing more than relics of a weaker species, insignificant and unworthy of caution. But appearances are often deceiving, a truth that humanity had learned through centuries of struggle. Inside the Horizon Asterisk, the atmosphere was thick with tension, but it was a tension laced with purpose. Captain Elias Grant stood at the center of the command deck, his figure tall and unyielding, like a pillar holding the weight of the moment. His sharp blue eyes, hardened by years of experience, scanned the holographic display before him, tracking the Zalorian fleet as it closed in. The alien ships moved with a predator's grace, their green glow casting an eerie light that seemed to seep into the darkness of space itself. Every detail of the Zalorian advance was deliberate, calculated, as if they were savoring the inevitability of their victory. Their arrogance radiated like a toxic aura, a confidence born from centuries of conquest. Yet within the Asterisk Horizon Asterisk, there was no panic. Elias' crew worked in silence, their movements precise and calm, as if the chaos outside was nothing more than background noise. They were not soldiers by birth, but adversity had forged them into something more. Each person carried the weight of humanity's survival, and their hands moved deftly across control panels, activating systems hidden beneath layers of deception. The hum of concealed weaponry stirred faintly, a sound that seemed to resonate with the heartbeat of the ship itself. It was a reminder of the truth that lay beneath the surface, a truth that the Zalorians could not see. Elias' voice broke the silence, steady and firm, carrying the weight of authority and experience. "Send the signal," he said, his tone measured but resolute. A young officer nodded and transmitted the coded message. Across the void, on board the Vanguard and Eclipse Captains Myra Lang and Darius Holt received the signal simultaneously. Myra, with her fiery red hair tied back in a braid, clenched her jaw as she reviewed the incoming data. Her ship, like Elia's, appeared plain and vulnerable, but beneath its surface lay a heart of steel, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. Darius, older and more reserved, adjusted his glasses and issued orders to his crew with the precision of a seasoned strategist. The message was simple yet powerful. Prepare for Phase 1. The human ships maintained their slow trajectory, drifting as if resigned to their fate. The Zalorian fleet tightened its formation, encircling the vessels like a pack of wolves closing in on wounded prey. Their ships glimmered with an unnatural light, their jagged edges sharp enough to cut through the fabric of space itself. At the center of the formation, the flagship Oblivion Spear loomed like a shadow of death, its imposing presence casting a darkness over the smaller human vessels. Inside the Horizon the tension was palpable. Every breath seemed heavier, every movement deliberate. The crew exchanged glances, their faces betraying a mixture of fear and resolve. They knew the odds, knew that the Zalorians were stronger, faster, and more advanced. But they also knew the truth hidden beneath their ship's unassuming exterior. Elia's voice cut through the tension once more, calm and steady, like the eye of a storm. "Let them come closer," he said, his tone unwavering. "Let them think they've already won." The Zalorians, blinded by their arrogance, scanned the human ships again. Their sensors detected nothing, no weapons, no shields, no sign of resistance. They laughed among themselves, their voices harsh and guttural, echoing through their sleek vessels. To them, this was not a battle but a slaughter, a chance to demonstrate their superiority. But arrogance is a dangerous blindfold, a lesson humanity had learned through its own history of conflict and growth. Inside the Horizon hidden compartments held advanced weaponry, reinforced armor, and experimental shield technology, marvels born not from privilege but necessity. These ships were not the fragile transports they appeared to be. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the Zalorian fleet surrounded them, the air seemed to grow colder, heavier, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The silence was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines and the rhythmic pulse of distant stars. Time seemed to stretch, each second a fragile thread hanging in the balance. Elias stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the approaching enemy. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the responsibility of leading his crew into the unknown. His thoughts flickered briefly to the families left behind, to the lives that depended on their success. Failure was not an option, but victory was far from guaranteed. On board the Vanguard Myra Lang tightened her grip on the edge of her console, her knuckles white. She thought of her younger brother who had died in the first wave of Zalorian attacks years ago. This battle was more than survival, it was justice, a reckoning for the lives lost. Darius Holt, aboard the Eclipse adjusted his glasses once more, a habit born of years spent in quiet contemplation. He had seen too many wars, too many lives sacrificed for the illusion of peace. This time they would fight not just for survival but for the future, a chance to prove that humanity was more than the Zalorians believed. The alien fleet moved closer still, their ships now within striking distance. The humans held their positions, baiting the Zalorians into attacking first. The tension built to a crescendo An invisible thread stretched taut between predator and prey. And then, in the quiet void of space, the trap was set. The silence in the void of space was broken by the harsh, guttural voice of Commander Vexarian. His words echoed across the communication channels, dripping with disdain and arrogance. "Humans," he began, his tone sharp and condescending, "you are surrounded. Surrender now, and perhaps we will show mercy. Resist, and you will be erased from existence." Inside the Horizon asterisk, Captain Elias Grant stood firm, his expression calm and unreadable. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon them. Elias took a breath, his voice steady and deliberate as he responded. "We are peaceful traders," he said, his tone measured, almost serene. "We mean no harm." Vexarian let out a harsh laugh, the sound grating like metal scraping against stone. "Peaceful traders?" he sneered. "You insult my intelligence. Let this be a lesson in humility." Without hesitation, Vexarian gave the order. A blinding green energy beam erupted from one of the Zalorian ships, streaking through the void like a serpent of light. It passed dangerously close to the Horizon asterisk, its heat and energy causing the ship's hull to tremble faintly. The crew flinched, some instinctively gripping their consoles, while others stared out into the darkness where the beam had dissipated. Elias remained motionless, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the holographic display. The attack was not a surprise, it was a calculated inevitability. "That's the confirmation we needed," he said calmly, his voice carrying an undercurrent of resolve. With a subtle nod from Elias, the crew sprang into action. Panels on the horizon began to slide open, the sound of shifting metal reverberating through the command deck. The ship's true nature was revealed as missile bays. Railgun turrets and heavy-duty shields emerged from their hidden compartments. The transformation was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, like a predator shedding its disguise to reveal the claws beneath. The Vanguard asterisk and Eclipse followed suit, their unassuming exteriors peeling away to expose their formidable weaponry. The ships seemed to grow in size and presence, their sleek frames bristling with armaments designed for war. The once vulnerable vessels now stood as symbols of human ingenuity and defiance, their transformation a silent declaration. Humanity would not bow. On board the Zalorian flagship Oblivion Spear asterisk, Commander Vexarian stared at the unfolding scene, his crimson eyes narrowing in disbelief. His crew scrambled to analyze the sudden shift, their scanners lighting up with warnings. Where moments ago they had detected nothing, now their systems revealed an arsenal capable of obliterating fleets. "How is this possible?" Vexarian hissed, his voice laced with fury. The Zalorian fleet hesitated, their predatory formation faltering as doubt crept into their minds. Vexarian's rage boiled over and he barked orders to his crew. "Attack! Destroy them before they strike." The Zalorian ships surged forward, their green energy weapons charging with deadly intent. But the humans were ready. Inside the Horizon asterisk, Elias' crew worked with precision, their movements synchronized like the gears of a well-oiled machine. The missile bays glowed faintly as they armed themselves, and the railgun turrets rotated smoothly, locking onto targets with mechanical accuracy. In the Vanguard asterisk, Myra Lang's fiery determination burned brighter than ever. Her hands danced across her console, issuing commands with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. Her ship's shields activated, shimmering like a veil of light that absorbed the incoming energy blasts. On the Eclipse asterisk, Darius Holt remained calm, his steady demeanor a source of reassurance for his crew. He adjusted his glasses one final time before issuing the command to fire. The ship's railguns roared to life, their projectiles slicing through the void with devastating speed and precision. The battle erupted in a symphony of chaos and destruction. The Zalorian fleet fired relentlessly, their green beams streaking through the darkness, but the human ships held their ground. Missiles from the horizon tore through the Zalorian ranks, their explosions lighting up the void like miniature supernovas. The Vanguard Asterisk and Eclipse joined the assault, their combined firepower overwhelming the enemy's defenses. Inside the Oblivion Spear Asterisk, Vexarian's fury turned to desperation. He watched as his fleet was systematically dismantled, their once imposing presence reduced to scattered debris. The humans fought not just with weapons, but with a determination born of survival, justice, and hope. Elias stood at the center of the command deck, his gaze unwavering. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. Humanity had revealed its strength. The void of space exploded into chaos as the Zalorian fleet unleashed its fury. Plasma missiles streaked through the darkness, their glowing trails like venomous serpents hunting their prey. Energy beams, bright and blistering, cut through the emptiness, aiming to tear apart the human ships that dared to defy their might. The Zalorian ships moved with precision, their formation tightening like a noose around their enemies. But humanity was ready. The shields of the Horizon Asterisk, Vanguard Asterisk, and Eclipse shimmered with a faint, ethereal glow, absorbing the incoming attacks with an almost defiant ease. The plasma missiles exploded harmlessly against the invisible barriers, their fiery brilliance fading into nothingness. The energy beams, so often the harbingers of destruction, dissipated like water splashing against stone. Inside the Horizon Asterisk, Captain Elias Grant stood amidst the storm, his presence unyielding in the face of chaos. His crew worked tirelessly, their faces tense but focused, their movements swift and purposeful. The command deck was alive with the hum of activity, a symphony of determination. Elias' voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the noise like a blade. "Target their engines and weapon systems," he ordered. "Precision strikes only. Let's show them what they've underestimated." The Horizon retaliated with a vengeance. Missiles streaked from its bays, their trajectories calculated with deadly accuracy. They struck the Zalorian ship's engines, explosions blooming like fiery flowers in the cold void. Railgun turrets fired with relentless precision, their projectiles piercing the enemy vessels, weapon systems, and rendering them useless. The crew of the Vanguard Asterisk, led by the fierce Myra Lang, moved with the fluidity of warriors honed by battle. Myra's fiery braids swung as she issued commands, her voice sharp and resolute. "Deploy the decoys," she ordered, her eyes gleaming with determination. From the Vanguard Asterisk, a series of small, shimmering devices scattered into the battlefield, their movements erratic and unpredictable. The decoys emitted false energy signatures, confusing the Zalorian targeting systems and causing their attacks to veer wildly off course. Plasma missiles exploded harmlessly in the void, and energy beams sliced through empty space, striking nothing but shadows. On board the Eclipse Darius Holt worked with quiet precision, his calm demeanor belied by the storm raging outside. His ship shimmered for a moment before vanishing completely, cloaked in an experimental technology that rendered it invisible to the Zalorian fleet. From the darkness, the Eclipse struck with devastating force. Railgun projectiles and missiles emerged seemingly from nowhere, tearing through the Zalorian ranks with surgical precision. The enemy ships spun in confusion, unable to locate the source of the attacks. And then the horizon unleashed its trump card. Its experimental railgun, a weapon of immense power and precision, hummed to life. The crew held their breath as the weapon charged, its energy building to a blinding crescendo. The railgun fired, a concentrated projectile streaking through the void like a spear of vengeance. It struck the Oblivion Spear Asterisk, Vexarian's flagship, with unerring accuracy. The projectile burrowed deep into the ship's hull, reaching its main power core. For a moment, the flagship seemed to tremble, its green glow flickering like a dying flame. And then silence. The Oblivion Spear drifted, its engines disabled, its weapons silenced. Inside, Vexarian roared in fury, his crimson eyes blazing as he slammed his fist against the command console. His crew scrambled to restore power, their movements frantic and desperate. The Zalorian fleet faltered, their confidence shaken. They had entered the battle expecting an easy victory, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with brute force. But humanity had shown them something they had never encountered before: tactical ingenuity, resilience, and the unyielding will to survive. Within minutes, half the Zalorian fleet was disabled, their ships reduced to drifting hulks in the void. The humans fought not just with weapons, but with strategy, turning the tide of the battle with every calculated move. Elias watched the battlefield unfold, his expression unreadable. The fight was far from over, but humanity had made its mark. They had shown the Zalorians that they were not prey, but predators in their own right. And the void of space, silent and eternal, bore witness to humanity's defiance. The retreating Zalorian ships limped away, their hulls scarred and their pride shattered. Their distress signal echoed through the void, a desperate cry for reinforcements. It did not take long for the call to be answered. Admiral Zorath arrived in a blaze of power and arrogance. His fleet of 40 warships cut through the darkness like a pack of predators, their sleek forms gleaming with menace. Zorath himself, a veteran commander with decades of experience, stood tall aboard his flagship, the Eternal Fury Asterisk. His presence exuded confidence, his crimson armor reflecting the cold light of the stars. "These humans," Zorath growled, his voice deep and commanding, "are nothing more than insects. We will crush them, and their insolence will be remembered as a fleeting mistake." The Zalorian fleet moved with precision, encircling the asteroid field where the human ships had retreated. The asteroids floated silently, their jagged forms casting eerie shadows across the battlefield. To Zorath, it seemed like the humans were cornered, trapped with no escape. But the humans had not been idle. For hours, they had worked tirelessly, preparing the battlefield for the inevitable clash. Engineers aboard the Asterisk Eclipse had transformed the asteroid field into a labyrinth of death. Explosives had been carefully rigged onto the largest asteroids, their placement calculated to cause maximum destruction. The crew moved with quiet determination, their hands steady as they armed each device. Myra Lang aboard the Asterisk Vanguard had taken charge of mapping, escape routes, and attack positions. Her pilots had studied the asteroid field like hunters learning the terrain of their prey. Every angle, every shadow had been accounted for, ensuring that the humans could strike where the Zalorians least expected. As Zorath's fleet tightened its grip around the field, the Admiral's confidence grew. He believed he had the humans trapped, their ships hidden among the rocks like frightened prey. "Begin the sweep," Zorath ordered, his voice echoing across the command deck. "Flush them out, leave nothing alive." The Zalorian ships advanced, their energy beams lighting up the asteroid field as they fired indiscriminately. The silence of the void was shattered by the sound of explosions and the crackling of energy. And then, the trap was sprung. The first explosion was deafening, a burst of light and fire that consumed a Zalorian warship in an instant. The asteroid it had passed near detonated, sending shards of rock and metal hurtling through the fleet. The debris tore through hulls, piercing shields and ripping ships apart. Zorath's eyes widened in fury and disbelief as more asteroids exploded, each blast carefully timed and positioned. The once static field became a chaotic storm, the asteroids themselves turning into weapons of destruction. From the shadows, the human ships emerged. The Vanguard struck first, its missiles finding their marks with unerring precision. Myra's pilots moved like ghosts, darting through the chaos and striking from angles the Zalorians had not anticipated. The Eclipse followed, its cloaking technology allowing it to slip through the battlefield unseen. Railgun projectiles rained down on the Zalorian fleet, each shot calculated to disable engines and weapons. The ship seemed to appear and vanish at will, a phantom of vengeance. The horizon held back, its crew waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Elias Grant watched the battlefield unfold, his gaze sharp and calculating. When the Zalorian fleet began to falter, their formation breaking under the relentless assault, Elias gave the order. "Now," he said, his voice steady. The horizon's asterisk railgun fired, the projectile slicing through the chaos like a spear of light. It struck the asterisk Eternal Fury asterisk, Zorath's flagship, with devastating force. The ship shuddered, its shields flickering and failing as the projectile tore into its hull. Zorath roared in anger, his fists slamming against the console. His fleet was in disarray, his ships unable to regroup amidst the chaos. The humans had turned the battlefield against him, their ingenuity and preparation proving to be his undoing. The Zalorian fleet began to retreat, their confidence shattered and their numbers dwindling. Zorath's flagship, crippled but still intact, limped away with the survivors. The humans did not pursue. They had won the battle, not through brute force, but through strategy, resilience, and the unyielding will to survive. The void of space, once silent and cold, now bore witness to their triumph. Admiral Zorath stood rigid on the bridge of his flagship, the asterisk Eternal Fury asterisk, his crimson eyes narrowing as he gazed at the asteroid field ahead. Jagged rocks floated silently, their dark surfaces glinting faintly in the light of distant stars. To him, it was a cage, a trap where the humans had foolishly cornered themselves. "Advance," Zorath commanded, his voice cold and unyielding. "Sweep the field, destroy them all." The Zalorian fleet surged forward, their engines humming with power as they entered the maze of drifting asteroids. The alien warships moved with precision, their shields shimmering faintly as they brushed past the hulking rocks. Zorath's confidence was absolute. He believed the humans were hiding, cowering in the shadows, waiting to be hunted down. But the humans were not prey. The silence of the asteroid field shattered as the first bomb detonated. The explosion was immense, a blinding flash of light that tore through the void. A nearby asteroid, massive and jagged, fragmented into thousands of deadly shards. The debris shot outward like a storm of knives, piercing through the shields of the nearest Zalorian ships. One warship was struck directly in its engine core, the explosion ripping it apart in a fiery blaze. Another ship spun wildly as its hull was punctured, its once pristine surface now riddled with gaping wounds. Zorath's eyes widened in shock as more bombs detonated in rapid succession. The asteroid field erupted into chaos, the silent rocks transforming into weapons of destruction. Massive chunks of stone, propelled by the force of the explosions, hurtled through the fleet. "Shields won't hold," a Zalorian officer shouted, panic creeping into his voice. The debris bypassed the alien ships' defenses with brutal efficiency, tearing through engines, weapons, and hulls alike. Ships that had once gleamed with power were now reduced to crippled wrecks, their lights flickering as they drifted helplessly in the void. Zorath clenched his fists, his fury mounting as he watched half his fleet crumble before his eyes. He had underestimated the humans, their cunning and their willingness to turn the battlefield itself into a weapon. And then the humans emerged. From the chaos of the asteroid field, the Horizon Asterisk, Asterisk Vanguard Asterisk, and Eclipse appeared like specters of vengeance. Their sleek forms moved with deadly grace, weaving through the debris with ease. The Horizon Asterisk led the charge, its weapons blazing as it targeted the remaining Zalorian ships. Missiles streaked through the void, each one finding its mark with unerring precision. Explosions lit up the battlefield as engines and weapon systems were destroyed. The Vanguard followed, its pilots executing hit-and-run tactics with ruth. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered ships and burning debris. What remained of Admiral Zorath's once mighty fleet scattered like frightened prey, their formation broken, their pride reduced to ashes. Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dreadspire Asterisk, his jaw clenched so tightly it felt as though it might shatter. His crimson eyes burned with fury, but beneath the rage simmered something colder, something unfamiliar. "Defeat, pull back," he growled, his voice sharp and venomous. "Regroup the fleet, we will crush them once we recover." The Dreadspire turned slowly, its engines roaring as it began its retreat. Around it, the few surviving Zalorian ships struggled to follow, their movements sluggish and desperate. Zorath's mind raced, calculating his next move. He refused to accept this humiliation. The humans had fought well, but they were pests, mere insects. He would return with reinforcements, and he would obliterate them. But the humans had no intention of letting him escape. On board the Asterisk Horizon Asterisk, Captain Elias Grant stood at the center of the command deck, his gaze fixed on the retreating Zalorian flagship. His expression was calm, but his eyes betrayed a fierce determination. He knew this was their chance to end it, to cripple the Zalorian fleet once and for all. "They're retreating," said Lena Drake, the tactical officer, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "If we let them regroup, they'll come back stronger. We have to stop them now." Grant nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "The Dreadspire is the key. If we take out their flagship, the rest of the fleet will scatter for good. Lena, find me a weak point." "Myra," he continued, turning to the communication console, "coordinate with the Asterisk Vanguard Asterisk and Eclipse Asterisk. We'll need them to keep the enemy distracted." Myra Lang's voice came through the comms, sharp and confident. "Understood. We'll keep them busy. Just make sure you hit your mark." The plan was set into motion. The Vanguard Asterisk and Eclipse surged forward, their weapons blazing as they launched a frontal assault on the retreating Zalorian fleet. The Asterisk Vanguard moved like a predator, its missiles striking with deadly precision before darting away to avoid retaliation. The Eclipse emerged from the shadows, its railgun firing at strategic targets to sow confusion and chaos. The Zalorian ships scrambled to defend themselves, their firepower focused entirely on the two human vessels. Zorath watched the battle unfold, his anger boiling over as he barked orders to his crew. "Destroy them!" he roared, slamming his fist against the console. "Do not let them escape." But while the Zalorians were distracted, the Horizon moved into position. The ship circled behind the asterisk Dreadspire asterisk, its movements calculated and precise. Lena Drake's fingers flew across the console as she analyzed the flagship's schematics, searching for a vulnerability. The Dreadspire was heavily armored, its shields formidable, but every ship had a weakness. "There," Lena said suddenly, her voice sharp with urgency. "The engine system. There's a junction point. If we hit it, we can disable their propulsion entirely." Grant's gaze hardened. "Prepare the shot." The Horizon lined up its railgun, the targeting system locking onto the weak point Lena had identified. The ship's crew held their breath, the tension thick enough to cut. Silence fell over the command deck as they waited for the order. "Fire!" Grant said, his voice steady. The railgun roared, its projectile streaking through the void like a spear of light. It struck the asterisk Dreadspire with devastating precision, piercing through the shields and slamming into the engine junction. The explosion was immediate, a burst of fire and metal that sent shockwaves rippling through the flagship. The Dreadspire shuddered violently, its engines sputtering before going dark. The massive ship drifted helplessly, its once imposing presence now reduced to a lifeless hulk. On the bridge, Zorath staggered as the ship trembled beneath him. Alarms blared and the lights flickered ominously. He gripped the console, his knuckles white as the realization sank in. The battle was lost. Around him, his crew looked to him for orders, their faces pale with fear. But Zorath had no commands to give. His pride, his arrogance had led them to ruin. The humans had outmaneuvered him, their cunning and resilience proving to be his downfall. Zorath's gaze turned to the viewport, where the human ships loomed like specters of vengeance. His crimson eyes burned with hatred, but deep within, he felt the weight of defeat pressing down on him. "Retreat," he said finally, his voice hollow. "All ships retreat." The Zalorian fleet began to pull back, their movements sluggish and disorganized. The humans did not pursue. They had achieved their goal. The flagship was crippled, and the Zalorian forces were scattered. As the asterisk Horizon asterisk, asterisk Vanguard asterisk, and Eclipse regrouped, the void of space seemed to hum with the echoes of their victory. They had faced the might of the Zalorian fleet and emerged triumphant, their determination and ingenuity proving stronger than brute force. And as the asterisk Dreadspire drifted helplessly, its lights dimming, Zorath was left to grapple with the bitter taste of defeat. The humans had won, and the battlefield belonged to them. The battlefield was silent now, a graveyard of shattered metal and drifting debris. The once mighty Zalorian fleet had been reduced to scattered remnants, their pride and power crushed beneath the weight of their defeat. The stars seemed to burn brighter in the absence of the chaos, their cold, distant light illuminating the wreckage that floated aimlessly through the void. Captain Elias Grant stood on the command deck of the Horizon asterisk, his posture steady, his gaze unwavering as he looked out at the remnants of the Zalorian forces. His ship, along with the asterisk Vanguard asterisk and Eclipse asterisk, had regrouped, their crews solemn but victorious. The battle was over, but Grant knew the war was not. "Open a channel," he said, his voice calm but resolute. The communication officer nodded, and moments later, the channel was live. Grant's words would echo across the void, reaching the ears of every surviving Zalorian ship. He stepped forward, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the console, his presence commanding. "You attacked humans," he began, his tone sharp and deliberate, each word carrying the weight of their victory. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were prey." The silence on the other end was palpable, the Zalorian crews listening intently, their pride and arrogance shattered. "You were wrong. Grant continued, his voice growing colder, more cutting. Today you learn the truth. We are not prey, we are predators, we are survivors, and we do not forgive. His words hung in the air like a blade, sharp and unyielding. The Zalorians, once so confident in their superiority, now felt the sting of humiliation. Their defeat was total, their pride reduced to ashes. "Return to your space," Grant commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that attacking humans is suicide." The message was clear, undeniable. Humanity, once underestimated and dismissed as helpless merchants, had proven their strength and ingenuity. They had turned the tide of battle, using their cunning and resilience to defeat an enemy that had believed itself invincible. On the Zalorian ships, the crews exchanged glances, their faces pale with shame and fear. Slowly, one by one, they began to retreat, their engines humming as they turned away from the battlefield. They carried with them the news of their defeat, a story that would ripple across the galaxy like a shockwave. As the Zalorian ships disappeared into the void, Grant turned back to his crew. The weight of their victory hung heavy in the air, but it was not a burden, it was a triumph. Across the galaxy, the myth of helpless human merchants began to crumble. Alien species, who had once viewed humanity as insignificant, now whispered of their strength and ingenuity. The story of the battle spread like wildfire, a warning to all who might consider humanity an easy target. On board the Horizon Asterisk, Grant stood before his crew, his expression thoughtful. The humans had fought in disguise, their ships masked as merchant vessels to avoid detection. But now there was no need for subterfuge. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and there was no reason to hide. "Remove the disguises," Grant said finally, his voice steady and firm. "Let them see what we really are." The crew nodded, their faces resolute. The Horizon